Yes, yes, and yes. Welcome to day 2 of night school. We are so incredibly excited that you are here and that you are joining us for our second day, 2 of 7 days. Listen, if you were not here with us yesterday, we want to say welcome. Welcome to the sacred space of connection, of learning, of getting clear on what's our story and doing the damn thing in our life every single day. We are so excited that you are here. So I want to see you guys in the chat. Let me see you roll call right now. Put your name and where you are joining from. Put your name and where you are joining from. Let's see if we have people that are connecting your name and where you are joining from. I love it. Welcome to our holiday set here inside of the Do the Damn Thing studios. I'm so excited. Listen, there's been so much excitement and gift wrapping and wrapping of doors and all kinds of things that have been going on. And so I have built up a little bit of a shema. So we'll forget about that. I am so excited that you guys are here. Listen, today is going to be delicious. If this is your first day, I want you to know that you came at the perfect time. Yesterday, we talked about why your story is so important, why you have to be telling your story, and who needs to hear your story. We began to look at some of the mindset pieces of what you're thinking and why we don't tell our story and how we're managing everybody else's insecurities. We're managing their judgments, their opinions. We're managing all of the things that truly don't have to do with us. They have to do with other people. And somehow we take on their beliefs. We take on their opinions. We take on their belief systems. And we don't feel incongruent with ourselves because we may not have the same beliefs. We don't have the same experiences. That's the one thing about story, is that nobody else has your story. It's the one thing in the marketplace that makes you stand out. It's the one thing that attracts people to you. And it's also the thing that we run from. We run from telling our story because we're living in the guilt, we're living in the shame, we're still living in the hurt of that moment. That part of our story. The beautiful part about that is that piece of your story is the answer, not only for you, but for somebody else. You know, I think back about myself. What I love and get excited about is it was not too long ago that 2 blocks away from where our studio is located at is where I met Tiffany. We were at the Phoenix Convention Center at a conference. I was working the conference, sitting at a booth, and I see this beautiful woman walk by. And I'm like, hi, how you doing? And she sat down with me, and her and I just began this dialogue. She told me her story. I told her a piece of my story. I thought I was telling the story, but I was really only truly telling a piece of the story. I was telling the piece of the story that I was the most comfortable with. I was telling the piece of the story that I had trained myself to give to the public because I was filtering the story, because I was still stuck in managing other people's insecurities. If you know that you are managing other people's insecurities, I want you to put inside of the chat right now, whether you're watching us here in our group or you are watching on YouTube. YouTube, hello, I want to welcome you. But I want you, if you are in a place where you know you're managing other people's insecurities, I want you to put inside of the chat, that's me. And I want you to put yourself on blast. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're not willing to take ownership that you're managing other people's insecurities, that you're putting everybody else first, you're never going to get to the goals You're never going to have the freedom. You're never going to have the peace of mind that you know you truly want and that you deserve. Your story is your superpower. Your story is the light that shines in the darkness. And when you step into a room that is bright and that has other people that are glowing, your light is what outshines everybody else. Somebody from across the room can say, that's the light I need. And they're attracted to you. Your story is your freedom. I'll never forget the day that Tiffany and I were having a VIP day. We're in LA on Ventura Boulevard at this Mexican restaurant. She was smart because she started me off with margaritas. And we began to have a conversation and she said, Matt, how many people know that you're gay? And I was like, well, I don't know. I haven't publicly said it. And I tell people privately if they ask, but it's nobody else's business. And in the conversation, she began to expose why my story is so important, why it was the key to what I was looking for. My story was truly the key to why I hired her as my coach. But I never truly, for myself first, embraced my story. The day that I shared my story on March 1st, 2020, is the day that I gave myself freedom. Tiffany told me that day on my VIP day, if you're not willing to tell your story, I'm not willing to coach you. And I was like, damn. We need people in our lives to pull us forward. We need people in our lives that lead the way. We need people in our lives that give us guidance. That's what Tiffany Largy was for me. That's what Do the Damn Thing is about. Where I am today is 180 degrees different than where I was before. And the truth is, I've played a very big game. I've impacted over 40 million people worldwide. I've stepped on hundreds of stages in multiple countries. I've worked for organizations like Disney, Six Flags, Lisa Nichols Motivating the Masses, Boys and Girls Club. I've had the opportunity to touch lives, to share my story. And even with all of that, there was so much more that I had the ability to give. But the truth was, I had to be willing to tell my story. I had to be willing to take the chance to have people who I thought were friends, had to be willing for family members to step away. I had to have some really rough conversations with some of the people that I loved the most. And the truth is, I also had to let some people go. People that I honestly thought were my ride or die. Some of them were the people that I trusted the most. And what I realized is that trust was based on what I could give them, which wasn't too big of a surprise because I've lived a life of trying to make everybody else happy. My dreams, my goals, relationships. It was a tough time. But the freedom that's on the other end is worth it all. It's what gives me the right to sit on camera right now with you. Because I've been there. I always say that I don't want to take directions from somebody that hasn't been where I want to go. When you tell your story, you become the answer. You become the solution. I'm stupidly excited about you being here, about you being able to learn, how do I tell my story? How do I distribute my story? What do I do with my story? How do I bring up my story in just everyday conversations? Today is going to be a day about distribution. Today is going to be about how do I get my story out there? How do I use my story? We have an amazing evening planned for you. So I'm going to ask you to grab your pen, your paper, grab a glass of wine, grab your shot glass. I was looking to make sure I had my shot glass and it's ready. Have some water because we have a delicious night ahead. But before we get started on day 2, let's take a look at day 1.
She said to me, you know, I want to tell you that I really haven't been happy in a long time. I mean, I make great money and I such and such, but I'm really not happy. And then she said, do you think I'm supposed to be happy? And I said, Mama, you know, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to tell you this. There is this Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans that I have for you. And I began to tell her, not because I wanted to be biblical, but because once I understood that happiness was for me too, 20 years ago, my whole life changed. I thought it was for those people. I thought it was for they and them. I thought it was over there for that, in that situation. You taking center stage is a decision. You taking back your stage from other people who keep trying to taint it is also your decision. You making a move in the next 24, 48 hours that puts you in front instead of keeping you behind is your decision. And I'm reminded today that 90% of the problem in the person, especially the avatar that's like me, is that they have too many people, they allow too much grayness, they show up to the Thanksgiving dinner when everybody is not cool and cool. We don't talk about that. That's the problem. So if you don't want me to talk about that, I shouldn't be there. Because I kind of like the truth. I'm tired of sweeping stuff under the rug. Just this year, someone called me and said, Tiffany, I heard what you said online. You shouldn't be talking about that. And my first response was, the truth? Is that what you just said? I shouldn't be talking about the truth? But the truth includes me. No, the truth, it starts with me. It includes me. Nobody cares about you. It's about me. And I'm not going to manage your insecurities about what you did or did not do. That's your own problem to deal with. This is my story. We here? Are we really here? Are we here? Welcome to day 2 of night school. Bum, 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 bum. I want to have a moment of silence because you are here. Regardless of what hasn't happened today, what hasn't gone right, what has felt good, what has not felt good, you are here. Is there anything more exciting than that? I promise you, sometimes I feel like you wake up and you're like, wait a second, what is happening? There is this glass that I got from my place. I have this glass that is on that is special to me because I invested in, what do you call one of those, the fancy thing that you pour from Mad Men with all the fancy glasses that go with it. And I remember saying to myself, when I invested in that thing and I brought a glass here, I was like, man, I feel different. Regardless of what hasn't happened today, I had to acknowledge the fact that I was holding this item and that I felt different. Sometimes that we need to be our own champions and simply say to ourselves, our own champions, our own cheerleaders, our own truth tellers, and say, hey, I feel different. I deserve to feel different. I deserve to feel different. What I know is that you are in the right place. Real quick, roll call. Real quick, first, last name in the chat. Tell me what city you're from. And more importantly, I want to know, what is your greatest aha? What is the thing that you go, holy mother of Johnson? I decided I'm going to find a way to chase today. You know, every so often it's like, Tiffany, do you just drink straight Jack the whole night? No, I don't. That would be irresponsible of me, right? I don't. I have the shot that starts the party, and then I chase it with Jack and Coke. You know what I'm saying? Everybody does something like that. What's the most important part of yesterday? I want you to take a moment before we even get into the conversation together. I want you to tell me what's your most important part of yesterday? What was the most exciting part to you where you said, oh my gosh, this is it? You know, when I picked up and I invested in a fancy glass at home, and I said to myself, you know what? I deserve this. I don't know what item that you've decided to do without this year, but I want you to take a moment with me and think about the thing that you have been putting off to buy, to purchase, to acquire, because you're like, you know what? I can't do it. But in all honesty, like, I want to take an honest, serious moment between you and me and say to you that you deserve it. I remember a time where I did without because I thought I didn't deserve it. You know? There was a really serious time in my career, in my life, where I did without because I was like, I really don't deserve it. Not only was I like, I don't deserve it, but I also felt like, well, not only do I not deserve it, but it's for those people. And let me just give you this glass, for example. So here it is. I have this glass, and I remember saying to myself, real talk, and I'm trying to talk to the other people here. But I remember saying to myself, real talk, I was like, I've got to treat myself well in these streets. Because if I don't treat myself well, who will? Like, if I don't treat me good, who's going to treat me good? There was a time where I went over and over again, and I stopped paying attention to the things that I needed for myself. And I started saying at another time, at another day, at another life, only for me to wake up one day and realize that it had nothing to do with another time, another day, another life. It had everything to do with what was my decision for myself right now. And I went and I started investing in fancy glasses because I really enjoy bourbon and whiskey and every once in a while rum. No, I enjoy rum all the time, but you don't drink rum straight. You know, you chase rum with like wine. You know, like you do things with rum because it's cultural for me. But the reality is that I remember the moment that I said to myself, Tiffany, if you don't treat yourself well, lady, who will? When was the last time that you took a moment just to buy something for yourself because it felt good? When was the last time that you took a moment to buy something for yourself because you felt like you deserved it? The amount of times that you have turned away things this year simply because you thought you didn't deserve it is unacceptable. I want to start today by telling you that. It's like I'm here to tell you, to give you a public service announcement. The amount of days that you have turned away things that you've needed and wanted simply because you felt like you didn't deserve it is unacceptable. And I want you to know it is unacceptable. I want you to make a decision with me right now for one thing that you are going to give, do, serve, or deliver to yourself simply because you deserve it. Before we even get started, one thing that you're going to do, buy, or acquire for yourself simply because you deserve it. Your responsibility to yourself is to treat yourself better than everybody else does. Not waiting for other people to treat you great. Your responsibility is to treat yourself better than everybody else does. And for those of you who are watching from other places, you are watching Night School. In front of me, I've got a lot of cameras and I have an amazing class who is here. And I make a decision to take a certain portion and share it with the world for those who have never registered or never been through Night School. Because part of making the next dollar or getting to the next level or being in the next space, we think that it is rooted in having the right opportunity, being in the right place at the right time. I'm married to the right person. Chances are you're in one of these spaces. One, you have made a decision to go without the things that you enjoy, you love, that excites you because your spouse is not interested in it. Tiffany, I thought we were here to talk about story. No, yeah, we are, for sure, 100%. I'm going to tell you how to implement this thing everywhere and how to win consistently. But the winning consistently game starts with getting to the facts and the truth of the matter and creating a foundation for yourself to stand on. You've been married to a person for a year, 2 years. You're dating a person who doesn't agree or doesn't have an interest in the things you have an interest in. So you compromise and you keep, it's like this. So you started out over here and they're over here. And the true breath of a great relationship or anything that's awesome is that you're making time to either move this way together, right? Meeting each other in the middle. Or if it's not that, you're doing something else. Sometimes you're just moving over. But I'll tell you what I learned is that not only is your responsibility to not move over, it is your responsibility to be clear on what you want, your willingness to do it, and to meet each other in the middle. If you have let yourself go on an account, and I say let yourself go, I mean, if you love dancing and you haven't danced in the last 30 days, there's a problem. If you have a passion for traveling and you haven't traveled in 60, 70, 90 days, that's a problem. If you really enjoy sitting outside in nature or having cookouts and you don't do that, that's a problem. If you live a life where you're isolated and you're not hanging out with friends and family all the time and you really enjoy sitting at coffee around a table and having I really want to emphasize the importance of what it takes for you to get what you want because it's rooted in this one word, leadership. Really quickly in the chat, can you just put the word, I am a leader? Put the sentence, I am a leader. It's leadership. And the very first thing or person that you need to lead is yourself. It's the hardest part of the game. Leading ourselves is really hard because we want to lead ourselves. We think about leading ourselves. We have ideas around leading ourselves, but then we don't lead ourselves because of other people. And then we become a follower just like that. I'm not saying that there's not a time and a place to follow, but what I am saying to you is that in the midst of having a time and a place to follow, you have a responsibility to simply lead. My statement to you before we talk about distributing the story, my want is to say to you, friend, amigo, please lead yourself. self. Now, there's a few things that I think are important from me to you right now. Inside of this story that you've got is this truth factor. And the truth factor, what it does is it puts us in a place of asking ourselves a really tough question. The question is, what part of my story do I distribute and who do I distribute it to? The problem with distributing our story is that we have already compromised pieces and parts of our story to accommodate and make other people comfortable. What I need to let you know is that inside of your story is the truth, and you need to let the whole truth have air so that it can become life. And when I say life, it's not that it lives in its rightful place amongst the people, but more importantly, inside of you. Think of your story as like a roadmap. Like, we lay this thing down, we walk it on it, and as we walk on it, we then it almost takes us on a path directly to who we want to be, where we want to be, and what we want to be doing. Your story is a path. If you heard me real quick, if you can just put in the chat, my story is a path. And I want to emphasize the fact that your story is a path, because your story is a path. And not only is it a path, but it pretty much can open up any door that you damn well want. I'm living proof of it. At this moment, as we speak, I'm at the other end of looking at a year where all the things felt impossible. I was so behind all of the cards, all of them. I mean, imagine, when was the last time you lost an entire year of your life because you were in the hospital? Too often we get this opportunity to acknowledge what we want, what's possible for us, but we don't realize that our story is a path, and that in this story, that's a path that if we're willing to think that, man, if I just took my story and I started distributing it, then that'd be the magic. That's the magic. Your story has the magic. It's like it has the pixel dust, the pixie fairy thing that goes over all of the stuff you want to build, and it brings it to life. That's the best part about your story. And I don't want you to leave it behind. And I want you to stop compromising it. And I don't want you to make it a sort of maybe kind of thing. Our story belongs in different formats. Let me give you a couple of the formats that I want you to think about. Like, where does my story get placed and what do I do with this thing? Your story gets placed in a couple of different formats. Who knows what kind of formats our story gets placed in? Who knows what kind of format our story gets placed in? Our story gets placed in a couple of different formats. Our story gets placed in a couple of different formats. What formats? You're wondering what I'm doing. I'm about to go live. That's what I'm doing, people. I'm about to go live in these streets. I am. And I'm going to tell my story, which is what I just decided. Hi there. Hope you can see me. I'm in the center of night school, and I wanted to tell you my story because I don't think you know my story. I don't think you know my story. For the last 10 years, I have been building. You know how many times people told me that I couldn't do and it was impossible? I feel like that's been the thing for me forever. I feel like that's been the thing for me for the last 20 years. 20 years ago, I gave birth to a child who I was obsessed with. And before I could even breathe, I was in a cycle of being put out of different apartments, being almost evicted. I couldn't put her to bed. I couldn't put food in her mouth. I was putting her to bed hungry, but I was putting her and her sister to bed hungry. Now, as I stand here today, I feel like the number one thing that I've had to overcome was being the underdog and managing my own mental health of wanting to stay in the game long enough to see the next chapter. Anyone else ever feel like that? Because that's the truth of the matter. And I feel like that's the thing that no one really wants to talk about. The fact that part of winning, succeeding, getting to the next level is literally being able to keep your mental health strong enough so that you can get to the next chapter or the next level. Am I the only person who's ever had that? That part of your struggle was just being able to stay in the game? The truth of my story, the truth of me telling my story is not so that I tell you I had a hard time or life was difficult. No, it's not about that at all. And if I've spoken to anyone so far, can I just get an amen? Because I remember still that it's like everyone would be around me being like, Tiffany, think big, or they'd be like, just have a positive attitude. And it's like, it's pretty hard to have a positive attitude when you're drowning. Like, I don't think that's how this works. It's hard to have a positive attitude when I'm in the middle of an ocean and I feel like everyone is swimming by me on an effing boat and pushing my head down in the midst of it. Like, really? Am I supposed to have a positive attitude? No. Like, for real, sometimes the reality is that you're just trying to figure out, how do I get to the next level? How do I mentally stay in the game long enough to get to the next level? Once I made a decision for myself, that's actually when everything changed. And I'm not going to tell you this is a journey about decision, but imagine being in Miami, Florida. Every person around you looks like they've got it figured out. Everybody got 2-parent households. You come from a culture and you are first generation American where you cannot be in pain. You cannot tell people your fears. You cannot tell the next person that it's hard. You definitely can't tell people your business. You can't tell people what's really happening. You have to suck it up and make it all look like it's great. That was like being a first generation American was hard. Being a first generation just out of a third world country, no matter where you had landed, is hard. Because I know I speak to people and family members I have in London and Europe, and like everybody goes through the same thing. It's hard because you're literally suffering and drowning in silence. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? If you hear me and if I've said anything useful, or you're like, oh, yes, I get it. Can I just hear coach or go ahead, coach? Because the reality is that you're in a situation, you're supposed to have it figured out, but you really don't have it figured out. And you're drowning, but then you can't talk to anybody. You keep going to the flipping altar call. Every time you go to church, you just run to the front. Like for me, I was like, well, shit, I can't talk to anybody. I am being encouraged by my culture to keep it quiet and to, not reveal how weak I am and to not appear needy and to not appear without and to not let people know I have scars. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just bury all the scars on the inside of this thing? Like in this vessel? How many scars can I have on the inside of this vessel before I'm bleeding from the inside and I damn near died? Like, I don't get it. What's this? What's this thing? So I remember 20 years ago really saying to myself, like, how is this going to happen? Jada and Maya are little. At 15 years ago, they're little. And I'm drowning. And all I can think to myself is, I want out. My story at that point had been a place of shame. And my story at that point had been a place of an anchor. Like, it wasn't something to be proud of and it wasn't something good. It really was something that I should share in pieces. And what it also did by me keeping it quiet is it allowed me to be connected and yoked, as I talked about yesterday, to other people that I shouldn't have been talking to, connected to. It encouraged me to keep going to churches that didn't serve me because they were selfish and self-centered organizations. It encouraged me to be inside of like groups because like there was a time where I was like, oh, I'm going to join a woman's group or a woman's Bible study. And I would go there and all I would find is judgment, like endless judgment. And nobody can tell me nothing. I done been to all the ones between Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, California, Tennessee. Y'all can't tell me nothing in these streets. I can't tell you the amount of women places that I would go to and all it would be judgment. I can't tell you that there was ever a woman who looked at this young girl with young kids and was like, oh, girl, I will help you pull you up. No, it would be like almost like a journey of like, it would be a journey of me giving the information of what like them wanting to help me sometimes so that they can just find more of the chisme. You know, like, what happened to the dad? Where's he at? What happened? Where are you guys from? Anybody know what I'm talking about right now? Anyone ever been through this? Where it's like someone just wants to come, they come closer specifically so they can grab the chisme. The chisme is what we call the gossip. It's the undercover. That's the Miami. Well, I don't know if it's a Miami word because it's not a Miami word. It's a hood word, I guess. Chisme. And for me, I found myself in this endless cycle of not being able to get anywhere. It's not even get ahead. I just couldn't get anywhere. Mentally, I was drained. Emotionally, I was done. I got to the point where I just didn't want to feel anymore. Forget good or bad. I just didn't want to feel. It's okay sometimes to just not want to feel. It's okay to be tired. Acknowledging where I was and who I was, not just where I was, but who I was, and letting go of the ideas of who I could be is actually what saved me. I didn't need to just start distributing myself and the story for what it could be. I just needed to distribute the story for what it was. I needed to distribute the story for what it was. Distribute the story for what it is. Kathleen, distribute the story for what it is. Distribute the story for what it is, not what it could be. Distribute the story for what it is, not what it was. We talk about our story like it's a past tense thing, and it's not. Our story is a current living thing. Your story is a current living thing. My story is a current living thing. Not only because I'm still alive, but well after I'm gone, all of the seeds from this story have been planted on this planet. It's not going nowhere. Newsflash. Here's your public service announcement, and yo, welcome. Your story doesn't go somewhere because you all of a sudden you're not here no more. What are you talking about? That's why this distribution part of this story is really important. That's why story is important. And that's why the distributing of it is important, because what you don't realize is that as soon as you're gone, whatever was left of your story is going to be right there in the grave with you. And you don't mess around and mess up all the opportunities that you had to go and tell the damn story. Too caught up in, I'm not telling it right. Too caught up in, but they're still alive. Too caught up in, it's not the right season for, I'm going to offend their feelings. I'm going to make them feel uncomfortable. I'm going to ... Too. Well, Tiffany, I've been thinking to myself, I'm going to tell my story on Instagram. I'm going to tell my story on Instagram. You know what? Let me pour a shot for telling my story on Instagram. I'm going to tell my story on Instagram on a social media platform. Okay. I'm going to tell my story in that way. Here's a news flash for you, family. Most people don't tell their story on Instagram or any other platform because they're waiting for it to be perfect. They want it to be curated. Oh, but I see those pretty profiles that are so exciting. And if I had a pretty profile, then I'd be able to distribute my story. Really? I have like 47,000 pictures in my phone, and I have like 10,000 videos, right? And I said to myself this year, coming back to the world, I was like, you guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure that every last one of these things get off my phone and they go into the world. Because when I'm gone, it's going to go on my phone. And my phone's going to be left, and eventually it won't exist anymore. And my story was sitting in a phone. What are we talking about? For the person who was sitting out there with 10,000, 4,000, 40, 400, 20 pictures, what are you doing? I need it to be done right. If I just edit, I don't edit any of these photos. I just post them. But what if I overwhelm people, overwhelm them? What if it's too much? Let it be too much. What if they get sick of me? They weren't for you. I don't care. You're in total control as to how you tell your story, but because you're messing around in your head about what other people think, and if it overwhelms them on a flipping free platform called Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, oh, but I don't want to offend them. Offend everybody. What are you talking about? Offend every fucking person. What are we talking about? Are you really willing to not offend other people on a free platform called on social media? Are you think about the logic of what I am saying right now? Are you really seriously? Like, I can't tell you how many people are tripped up by the fact that they don't want to offend somebody on a free platform that they got a 2-cent friend request from, and they're going to keep their story to themselves in the phone after they done took the time to take the trip, have the tough conversation, look at the camera and talk. Let this be a public service announcement to everybody that is connected to me. As you watch me make these next moves, I will not have my story told by somebody else. Period. Every single day that I wake up, every day I'm doing things with people, with friends, with family, with myself. I am not going to have someone else tell my story. Why, oh, why would I allow that to happen? And the gaps in between the days, you know what it does? It leaves a time for an interpretive narrative of what did I do with my life? If you are living every day, you should be telling your story every day. If you are living every day, you should be telling your story every day. Let me just have a moment for that. I don't know if you heard me. If you are living every day, you should be telling your story every day. Forget for the sake of marketing and forget if you run a business or own a business. Let's just move that aside. Think about the gravity of the fact that you have access to free platforms that are open 24 hours a day in a gazillion countries on the planet that we all call home. You can reach all the people, a lot of people. Forget if they need you or not, just to talk to them, just to build relationships, to share, to connect, to do what we were meant to do as humans, just to be. And you have the ability to do that. But because you're caught up, you're wrapped up and caught up, and I don't want to overwhelm them on my feed. I want them to still like me. What? What? What are you really saying? I want to make sure that you hear what I'm saying to you. Bestie. And this might be a hard conversation, and this might be a tough moment. And from me, my heart to yours, like, think of me this week as your best friend. Because bestie, this is the stuff that no one's going to tell you. And I feel like I have a responsibility to tell you, because there was a time that I almost went looking back at my family culture and family like, oh, you're right. We should totally keep this to ourselves, all of it. And not forget the stuff of the past, the stuff I'm currently feeling. That my husband and I are arguing. My husband and I don't argue a lot, but I did leave him in Los Angeles. I'm not going to talk about that. We don't talk about the hard things. We also don't talk about the truth. We leave them subject to interpretation, or we talk about the surface stuff and we leave the stuff behind. If you would be willing to just possibly see that the magic of whatever it is you're trying to connect to or do or accomplish is rooted in your ability to tell your story, your ability to just tell the story of what's happening right now, tell the truth of what's happening right now, that you would turn over everything you want. But Tiffany, you know, the people in my industry won't respect you. They weren't going to really respect you anyways. And I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to build nothing on a lie. Let me just go ahead and tell you all the truth and be done with it. The truth of how you feel, the truth of your mental health, the truth of what's happening in your home, the truth of what's happening with your kids, the truth of what's happening yourself. I wrote an email the other day and I was like, I gained 20 pounds. And a woman was like, why would you tell people that? Because that's what happened. I gained 20 pounds. Was I supposed to keep it to myself? Why? Because you see how good I look? What are we talking about? Yeah. Because for me, I'm like, well, maybe I'm inspiring people to be like, go ahead and eat the fourth cookie. Like, it's okay. We'll survive. Thank God for lipstick. I gained 20 pounds and I'm going to wear the tightest dress. I'm looking for more. I'm about to turn a new decade next year. You can't even talk to me. Let 20 pounds, here we come. Well, why did you do it? Because the truth is and then I didn't, and I do. Like I remember telling someone, you know, there was a period of time where I went to like a fitness center. It was a fitness center that I love. And I remember packing a snack to go. And I don't really snack and I don't eat bad. That's not how I gained the weight. I actually gained it because of medication and hormones and all types of things. But there was this one day where I remember someone was like, Tiffany, you really shouldn't be eating sweets and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm very far from diabetes. I barely eat sweets. I barely eat. But I am going to pack these Oreos on the way to my fitness center. So I have a snack for after I'm done with my workout. And I remember someone looking at me like, why would you do that? Because it's exactly what I want to do. Do you realize that I could die tomorrow? I don't want you to get caught up in the nuances of the mechanics of telling your story, or the mechanics of telling your story and letting it be a freedom place for you. Because that's really what it is. It's a place of freedom. It's a place of peace. It's a place of truth. It's a place of excitement. It's a place of honesty. It's a place of integrity. It's a place of magic. I really want you to take a moment and to ask yourself about, not to ask yourself, but to sit inside of whatever it is that you've wanted to capture for you this upcoming year, or this upcoming season in your life. And whatever that is, like wherever it comes from, what part of your story do you need to get in front of? And what and where do you need to be distributing your story in order for you to reach the person or people that you need to make the thing happen? Right now in the chat, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and I'm going to ask you to do me a favor in the time to allow yourself to sit with the truth, especially whatever. In a moment, you and I are going to get into the mechanics of how do I distribute the story? How do I tell it on stage? What does it look like when I'm trying to make something happen? And then in the spirit of converting and sales. Right now, we're going to take a quick break. And I'm going to ask you with this time, while we're taking a break, not to go and let the dog out, and not to necessarily go on social media. I actually want you to take a moment to connect with someone else, or write it on a piece of paper. Like, what exactly do you need to do? Who do you need to connect with? Like, what's on the other side of an action that you've already known before you got to this moment? Before you got to this moment, you had an action. You had something that you knew that you needed to do, but you hadn't been doing it because you weren't sure how to do it. I'm going to ask you to write it down, because the reality is that the answer that you need is really right here in this room. If you only knew the amount of things that I had to conquer and step in front of to be able to stand here right now with you. Do not take this time for granted, not for my sake, but for you, because I'm standing here because I want you to win. We're going to head to a break in just a moment. And this is your time to take a deep breath, to entertain what's possible, and to dive deep. Here we go. I'll see you in a moment. You know what's so crazy is that I have things for us to get done in order for that thing to happen. But the truth of the matter is that there's never 25 things. There's only like 2 or 3, maybe 4. But because we build up this big thing in our heads, and we allow ourselves to let other people's ideas and thoughts about how tough it'll be, how long of a journey it'll be, how expensive it'll be, we just never do it. So in our minds, there's a perception, but the reality is that you got 2 or 3 steps in front of you, like 2 or 3 steps to actually go and make this thing happen. Man, there is a reason why our company is called, like, you're either doing the damn thing, because you're either doing the damn thing or you're not. And what would happen if you just took a moment to consider the possibility of maybe taking step number 1, then step number 2, and step number 3? Is it possible that in 12 months from right this second, you could be to exactly where you want to be? Is it as far as you really think, or are you allowing other people to create distance that's not really there?